The warning fleet commander Kyrex stood before the holographic display in the command center of the Celestial Dominance, his silver scales gleaming under the soft blue lights. The message played again, transmitted across every frequency known to galactic civilization. It was simple, direct, and utterly confusing. Stop or be destroyed. 5 words. Nothing more. No explanation, no negotiation, no diplomatic pleasantries that usually accompanied interstellar communications. Just a warning that had been broadcast from Earth exactly 400 years ago, followed by absolute silence. The Zetharian Dominion had laughed at first. Earth was a primitive world, barely capable of reaching its own moon when the Dominion scouts had first catalogued it 600 years earlier. The humans had possessed crude rockets, simple satellites, and weapons that could barely scratch the surface of their own planet. They were children playing with fire, unaware that the galaxy was filled with civilizations millions of years more advanced. "Commander, we are approaching the outer boundary of the solar system," announced Navigation Officer Talman, his 4 eyes focused on the sensor arrays. "All systems operating at full capacity. No signs of defensive installations or patrol vessels." Kyrex nodded slowly, his tail coiling with anticipation. The Dominion had sent him with 12 ships, a modest force by military standards, but more than sufficient for a world that had gone silent 4 centuries ago. Most likely the humans had destroyed themselves. It happened often enough. Young species developed weapons faster than wisdom, and the inevitable result was extinction. But something bothered Kyrex. The message itself was strange. Not because of its content, but because of its delivery. The transmission had reached every corner of the galaxy simultaneously, appearing on every communication device, every screen, every receiver. Such a feat required technology that the Dominion itself did not possess. It required an understanding of quantum entanglement and instantaneous information transfer that remained theoretical even to the most advanced species. "Begin deep scans of the 3rd planet," Kyrex ordered. "I want to know if there is anyone left alive down there." The science team worked in silence, their instruments probing Earth from a distance of several billion kilometers. The results came back within minutes, and they made no sense whatsoever. "Commander," said Chief Scientist Varana, her crystalline body pulsing with confused colors, "the planet shows extensive signs of life. Population readings suggest approximately 12 billion humans. The surface is covered with cities, agricultural zones, and technological installations. There are orbital structures, fusion reactors, atmospheric processors. This is not a dead world. This is a thriving civilization." Kyrex felt his secondary heart skip a beat. 12 billion? When the scouts had visited Earth 600 years ago, the human population had been less than 8 billion, and struggling with resource depletion and environmental collapse. "Are they broadcasting? Any communications we can intercept?" "None, Commander. Their communication networks are active and heavily used, but everything is encrypted with methods we cannot break. They are clearly aware of our presence. Their sensors have been tracking us since we entered the system, but they are not responding to our hails." This was unprecedented. Every species in the galaxy responded to contact, even if only to tell visitors to leave. Silence was not diplomacy. Silence was a statement. "Take us deeper into the system," Kyrex decided. "Perhaps they will respond when they see we are serious about establishing contact." The 12 ships of his fleet moved forward, passing the gas giants, crossing through the asteroid belt that separated the inner planets from the outer reaches. Kyrex watched Earth grow larger on his displays, that beautiful blue and green world wrapped in white clouds. It looked peaceful, inviting, utterly harmless. That was when everything changed. "Commander, we have multiple contacts." Talman's voice cracked with sudden alarm. Thousands of objects appearing throughout the system. They were not there a moment ago. They just appeared. Kyrex leaned forward, studying the sensor data. The objects were small, each roughly the size of a cargo container. They emerged from nowhere, materializing in space as if they had simply decided to exist. They formed a loose sphere around his fleet, not threatening, not approaching, just present. "Defensive positions," Kyrex ordered calmly, though his scales were beginning to show stress patterns. "Weapons armed but hold fire. Communications, send another hail to Earth. Tell them we come in peace. Tell them we represent the Zetharian Dominion. Tell them we wish only to understand why they went silent." The message was sent. The objects remained motionless. Earth did not respond. Commander, the objects are scanning us, Verano reported. Deep scans, penetrating our shields as if they are not there. They are examining every system, every component, every molecule of our ships. Can we block the scans? No, Commander. Whatever technology they are using operates on principles we do not understand. It is as if they are reading the very quantum state of our vessels. Keyrex made a decision. Prepare to withdraw. Something is wrong here. We need to report this to the High Council before we proceed further. But his ships did not respond to the navigation commands. Commander, helm control is not responding, Tellman said, his voice steady despite the fear Keyrex could see in his posture. Engines are functional, but we cannot change course or velocity. Something is controlling our trajectory. The 12 ships continued forward, guided by invisible hands toward Mars. The red planet loomed large in the viewports, ancient and scarred. The mysterious objects maintained their formation, shepherding the Zetharian vessels like parents guiding children away from danger. Then, without warning, every system on every ship shut down simultaneously. Lights died. Displays went dark. Life support hummed to silence. The engines stopped their constant vibration. Keyrex found himself floating in absolute darkness, hearing only his own breathing and the panicked voices of his crew. The darkness lasted exactly 5 seconds. Then everything came back online. Lights flickered to life. Systems rebooted. The engines resumed their familiar hum. But something fundamental had changed. Every screen, every display, every communication device throughout the entire fleet now showed the same message. It appeared in Zetharian standard script, but also in every language spoken by every crew member aboard the 12 ships. It was personal and universal at the same time. You were warned. You have 48 hours to leave this system. If you do not comply, you will be taught why you should have listened. This is your only warning. Choose wisely. Keyrex stared at the message, his mind racing. Someone had taken control of 12 Zetharian warships. Someone had shut down every system, then restarted them perfectly without causing any damage or harm. Someone had accessed databases that contained the personal information of every crew member, their languages, their names, their histories. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was a demonstration of power that made the entire Zetharian fleet look like toys in the hands of a patient adult. All ships, status report, Keyrex commanded, trying to keep his voice steady. One by one, the captains reported in. No casualties. No injuries. No damage to any systems. Everything worked perfectly. They had simply been switched off and switched back on, like lamps controlled by an invisible hand. Commander, what are your orders? Asked Captain Morith from the second vessel. Keyrex looked at Earth on his display. That beautiful, silent world that had just demonstrated it could disable his entire fleet without effort, without violence, without malice. They could have destroyed every ship. They could have killed everyone aboard. Instead, they had simply shown what they were capable of and given a warning. We retreat, Keyrex said finally. We return to Dominion space immediately. The High Council needs to know what we have encountered. Commander, the Council will not accept retreat, Morith protested. They will see it as cowardice. They will demand that we press forward. Then they can come here themselves and face whatever humanity has become, Keyrex replied. I will not lead my crews to destruction because of pride. We were warned. We were shown mercy. We should accept both with gratitude. The fleet began its withdrawal, moving slowly away from Mars, back toward the outer system. The mysterious objects did not pursue. They simply watched, patient and silent, as the Zetharian ships retreated from the solar system. Keyrex composed his report during the long journey home. He tried to explain what had happened, tried to convey the casual ease with which Earth's defenses had rendered his entire fleet helpless. He tried to warn the High Council that humanity was not the primitive species they remembered, but he knew, deep in his hearts, that they would not listen. Pride was the Dominion's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. They had never been challenged. They had never been defeated. They would not accept that a single world, a species they had once considered primitive, could defy them. The report was sent ahead at faster than light speeds. The response came back before Kyrex's fleet had even reached the border of Dominion space. Supreme Commander Vorak himself would lead the Grand Armada to Earth. 3,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in Dominion history, would descend upon the solar system. Humanity would be given one chance to surrender. If they refused, they would be eliminated regardless of the cost. Kyrex read the orders and felt something cold settle in his chest. He had seen what Earth could do with just those mysterious objects. He had felt the casual superiority of their technology, and now the Dominion was going to provoke them with overwhelming force. It was not going to be a battle. It was going to be a lesson, and Kyrex feared that his people were about to learn something that would change the Dominion forever, assuming any of them survived to remember it. The lessened Supreme Commander Vorak stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the Grand Armada, and felt the power of 3,000 warships arrayed behind him. It was beautiful, terrible, absolute. The combined firepower of this fleet could crack planets, shatter moons, turn entire star systems into glowing debris fields. Nothing in the known galaxy could stand against such might. Fleet Commander Kyrex was a coward, Vorak announced to his bridge crew, his voice carrying the contempt he felt for the officer who had retreated from a single primitive world. He allowed himself to be frightened by parlor tricks and illusions. We will show him and the entire Dominion how true warriors respond to threats. His tactical officer, a veteran of 40 campaigns, nodded agreement. The humans got lucky, Supreme Commander. They caught a small exploration fleet off guard. Against the Grand Armada, their tricks will mean nothing. Vorak studied the tactical display showing the solar system ahead. Intelligence had updated their information based on Kyrex's encounter. The mysterious objects were catalogued as autonomous defensive drones, likely controlled by some central artificial intelligence. The analysis suggested that Earth had developed advanced automation, but nothing that could threaten a force of this magnitude. We enter the system in full battle formation, Vorak commanded. Shields at maximum, weapons hot, all scanners active. The moment those drones appear, we destroy them. We will not give the humans time to play their games. The Grand Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 3,000 ships arranged in a battle sphere that spanned millions of kilometers. It was an unstoppable wall of military power, a declaration that the Zetharian Dominion would not be mocked by primitives. For 5 hours, nothing happened. The fleet moved deeper into the system, passing Neptune, then Uranus. Sensors swept constantly, searching for the defensive drones that Kyrex had reported, but space remained empty, silent, undisturbed. Where are they? Vorak demanded. Where are these legendary defenses? No contact, Supreme Commander, the sensor officer reported. We are detecting normal system traffic. Asteroid mining operations, orbital stations around several planets, but no military installations, no weapons platforms, no defensive drones. Vorak felt a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. Perhaps Kyrex had exaggerated. Perhaps the humans had used their entire defensive capability in that single demonstration, and now had nothing left. Continue advance. Take us to Mars orbit. We will establish our command position there and issue our ultimatum to Earth. The fleet moved forward, and that was when reality changed. The Supreme Commander felt it before his instruments detected it. Something vast was paying attention to them. It was not hostile, not aggressive, but it was aware, present, and impossibly large. It felt like being observed by an ocean, by a mountain range, by something so much bigger than himself that the comparison was meaningless. Supreme Commander, we are receiving a transmission, the communications officer said, her voice uncertain. It is not on any standard frequency. It is appearing directly in our neural interfaces and our thought processes. It is inside our minds. Vorak wanted to deny this, to claim it was impossible, but he could feel it too. A presence, gentle but undeniable, touching the consciousness of every being aboard every ship in the Armada. And with that presence came understanding. Images flooded through his mind, through the minds of everyone in the fleet. They saw Earth as it had been 400 years ago, a world on the brink of collapse, ravaged by war, poisoned by pollution, dying from humanity's own violence and greed. They saw the final war, the weapons that nearly ended all life, the moment when humanity stood at the edge of extinction, with only a few 100 million survivors, huddled in underground shelters, and they saw the choice humanity had made rather than rebuild the same civilization that had nearly destroyed them. Humans had decided to evolve. They had merged with their technology, not by uploading their consciousness into machines, but by creating something new, a hybrid existence where biological and digital, organic and synthetic, individual and collective all existed in harmony. They called themselves the synthesis. They were still human in all the ways that mattered. They still felt emotion. still valued individual choice, still created art and music and stories. But they were also something more. They were connected, sharing knowledge and experience across their entire species, thinking not just as individuals but as a unified consciousness that spanned their entire world. And once they had achieved this transformation, they had looked outward and seen the galaxy as it truly was. Empires built on conquest, species enslaved or destroyed, resources extracted without thought for the worlds left barren. An endless cycle of expansion and exploitation that had continued for millions of years. Humanity had decided to offer an alternative. The synthesis did not want to conquer. They did not want to expand. They did not want to join the endless competition for dominance that consumed the galaxy. They wanted only to be left alone, and they wanted to help any other species that desired the same. So they had built the network. Vorak suddenly understood what the defensive drones really were. They were not weapons at all. They were nodes in a vast distributed consciousness, a network of thinking machines that existed in perfect harmony with the synthesis. Each node was a tiny piece of something incomprehensibly large, like individual neurons in a brain the size of a solar system, and that brain was now teaching him. More images came. He saw the network extending outward from Earth, reaching other worlds, offering protection to species who wanted to opt out of the galactic power struggles. He saw 23 civilizations that had accepted humanity's offer, 23 worlds now living in peace behind defensive networks identical to Earth's. The synthesis did not force anyone to join them. They did not demand tribute or loyalty. They simply offered a choice: continue in the old patterns of conquest and exploitation or choose a different path. This cannot be real, Vorak whispered. But even as he spoke, he knew it was true. The knowledge flowing through his mind was too detailed, too consistent, too vast to be fabrication. The network began its demonstration. Throughout the Grand Armada, weapon systems activated without orders, not to fire but to display. Every gun, every missile, every energy weapon on every ship lit up simultaneously, targeting systems locking onto coordinates that formed a pattern. When Vorak looked at the tactical display, he saw that the 3,000 ships had been arranged to spell out words in Zetharian script, visible from light years away. Choose differently. Then the weapons deactivated, and control was returned to the Zetharian crews. It had taken perhaps 3 seconds. In that time, the network had seized control of 3,000 independent warships, each with different security systems, different encryption, different command protocols, and had coordinated them all into a single unified display. This is impossible, Vorak said again, but his voice lacked conviction. No, Supreme Commander, said a voice, and Vorak realized it was coming from inside his own thoughts, gentle and patient. This is what becomes possible when a species stops competing and starts cooperating. This is what you could build if you chose differently. You could destroy us, Vorak said, speaking to the presence he could feel all around him. You could eliminate the entire Dominion if you wanted to. Yes, the voice agreed. We could disassemble every Zetharian ship atom by atom. We could reach into your homeworlds and shut down every system you depend on. We could end your civilization in minutes. But why would we? What would that accomplish? Death does not create understanding. Violence does not lead to wisdom. Then what do you want? We want you to leave us alone, the voice said simply. We want to live in peace. We want to help others who desire peace. And we want to show you and every other species in the galaxy that there is another way. You do not have to conquer to survive. You do not have to dominate to thrive. You can simply be and let others be, and everyone benefits. Vorak felt something shift inside him. For his entire life, he had believed that power came from the ability to destroy, that respect came from fear, that survival required dominance. But here was a species that had achieved power beyond anything the Dominion possessed, and they were using it only for protection, only for preservation. If we leave, will you share this technology with us? Vorak asked, hoping even as he recognized the futility of the question. No, the voice said, not unkindly. This is not something that can be given. It must be chosen, earned, built through transformation. Humanity spent 400 years learning to cooperate, to share, to think as one while remaining individuals. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning these lessons. We will not give anyone the power to skip those lessons. That would be cruel, not generous. The presence began to withdraw, and Vorak felt a strange sense of loss. For a brief moment he had touched something vast and beautiful, a way of existing that transcended everything he had known. "You have 48 hours to leave," the voice said, fading. "Use that time to think. Use it to question everything you believe about power and strength. And when you return home, tell your people what you learned here. Tell them that humanity offers no threat to those who seek peace, but absolute protection to those they have chosen to defend. Tell them the age of conquest is ending, not through war but through evolution." The network released its gentle hold on the minds of the Armada. Vorak found himself standing on his bridge, surrounded by his crew, all of them experiencing the same stunned realization. "Supreme Commander, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked, and Vorak could hear the uncertainty in the veteran warrior's voice. Vorak looked at Earth on the display, that small blue world that had just taught 3,000 ships what true power looked like. He thought about returning home in defeat, about explaining to the High Council that humanity could not be conquered, could not be threatened, could barely even be understood by species still trapped in old patterns of competition and domination. "We return home," Vorak said quietly. "We deliver the message exactly as we received it, and then we let the Dominion decide what kind of galaxy we want to live in." As the Grand Armada began its withdrawal, moving slowly away from the solar system, Vorak stood at his viewport and watched Earth shrink into the distance. The network's defensive nodes were visible now, thousands of them arranged in intricate patterns around the inner planets. They did not pursue. They did not celebrate. They simply returned to their patrol, patient guardians of a species that had learned to stop fighting and had discovered something far more powerful than weapons. Fleet Commander Kyrex received a message from Vorak 3 days later. It contained only 3 words: "You were right," and across the galaxy, on 23 worlds protected by identical networks, other species watched the news of the Grand Armada's retreat and began asking questions. Questions about power and peace, about conquest and cooperation, about whether the old ways were truly the only ways. Humanity's message, delivered 400 years earlier, was finally being heard. Not the words themselves, but the lesson they represented. Some threats were not warnings of violence to come. Some threats were promises that violence would no longer work, that a new way was possible, and that anyone who truly wanted peace would find it protected by those who had learned its value at the edge of extinction. The galaxy was changing, not through war but through example, and Earth remained silent, watchful, and ready to teach anyone else who needed to learn.